This is about an autobiography, I think.
We're going to learn all about your life
Me?
and things that we maybe knew a little bit about and get to know even more about, and very excited for the world to get to know more about your life, Arny.
And I'm excited to know more about myself.
Well, that's even better.
That's
even better.
That's the point.
Shall we start at the very, very beginning?
We're starting.
How did you arrive here on Earth, Arny?
Well, I don't know, but my mother said that she was going to a New Year's Eve party in 1940. She was walking down the stairs, and I made a big bang in her tummy. And they had to rush her to the hospital to bring me out. And it was 3 minutes after midnight New Year's Eve. So I came with a big woof. I was the first baby born in New York State at that time. I couldn't wait. I just made a big woo in her tummy. And out I came.
So when she was coming down the stairs and you did a big bang, did she fall?
She fell down the stairs. She didn't get hurt, but she had to go right to the hospital to bring me out.
So you had like a bumpy woof.
That's how to say it.
If you look back now, how old are you today?
How old? I'm somewhere between 81 and 800.
81 and 800.
Just about 82.
When you look back now to that moment when you did the big kick and came out at that bumpy entrance, how do you think that helped create your blueprint of your life?
Yeah. Good question. I've always said, hey, let's make a change in this world. Let's do this and that. It's an energy behind creative new ideas that can't wait and says, woof, let's bring them out.
So that was there even before you came out.
Yeah.
That was there from inside.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
What do you remember about being really, really little? What do you remember about that?
I don't remember anything much until I was about 2 or 3. Otherwise, I don't remember anything at that little point.
How about your mama? Can you say a little bit about your mama and your papa?
Mama and Papa, what would you like to know?
Well, who were they that created you and brought you into this world?
Wow. I don't know if they brought me into the world. I came through them.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But it was the Second World War, and they were always listening to the radio to see who was getting killed during the war, and they wouldn't let me listen to it when I was very, very little. And they said, that's not anything interesting. So I was born in the war. That was a big thing. When I was really little, they had to turn the lights off in the evening so that potential airplanes flying overhead wouldn't see a lit up house. Everybody in New York State had to do that at that time. So we're worried about the Second World War airplanes bombing us. So I was born like that, and then I grew up very little. We had to go right into the cellar of the house whenever there was an airplane sound overhead. People were nervous about the Second World War happening where we were in Upper New York State. Every night when I went to sleep, my mother came to my bedside and said, let's pray for your grandma and aunts and uncles and everybody that they survive. I said, survive what? She said, just survive. She didn't want to tell me about the war. I was too little yet.
Where were your grandma and your aunts and your relatives?
They had just made it to, some of them came to the United States. Others disappeared in the war, Second World War.
And where did they come from, those that were able to get here?
Well, Latvia, Lithuania, Germany. My mother came from Berlin.
She came from Berlin to the United States.
She loved Berlin and never said a word against the Germans, ever.
You know, you said that every night before you went to bed,
Yeah.
Your mother said, let's pray. What kind of spiritual upbringing or religious upbringing did you have?
I didn't have a religious upbringing in the conventional sense. Just pray for your grandmother and the aunts and uncles that they don't get hurt. And she didn't talk about the war. They didn't let me listen with them to the radio. So I didn't know about war yet.
And so your mom came from Berlin to the United States. How about your dad?
My father was born in just south of Moscow, Russia. So they were both wonderfully foreigners.
And how did they meet?
How, boy, I don't know about that. Oh, yes, I do. My mother's family was in New York City, and they didn't have much money. They were just walking around. And my father went to visit New York, saw my mother, and picked her up in the car. And to make the story short, a few years later, they got married.
Do you have any brothers, sisters?
I have a brother, Carl, who was a psychiatrist. Now he's in the other world. No sisters.
Did he come before you or after you?
4 years earlier. I came on just in time so that my father didn't have to go into the army during World War II. If you have 2 kids, you can wait longer. You don't have to go into the war. So he didn't. He just worked for the General Electric Company instead of going into the military and fighting during World War II because of the second child.
That seems like the beginning of world work right there. Like your arrival stopped him from having to go and fight in the war.
That touches me when you say that. Wow. I never thought about it. It's true. I came about so that my father wouldn't have to go to war. War has always been on my mind in the background.
Being born into a war.
Yeah.
And thinking about all the work you've done in your life, see some connection right there.
Yeah. Got to start something like world work. I knew it when I started going to elementary kindergarten.
How did you know that in kindergarten?
Well, I was walking on my way to school, and a bunch of children came and said, "We have to kill you." Why? I said. They said, "You have the wrong God." God? I didn't worship or practice, though you didn't even know what a God was yet. God? What's that? They tied me behind a tree was the end of the Second World War. They tied me behind the tree. And I won't go into the details. It wasn't very good. And I was on the tree, and the African American children said, "Don't pass out, they'll kill you." I remember that. Touches me even now. I don't know what happened. The next thing I know, I was a little bit bloody walking to kindergarten. And the teacher in kindergarten said, "You're a sloppy mess. What happened?" I said, "This is the World War." And she was angry at me, and I went home and got washed up.
The teacher was angry at you?
"You're a sloppy mess. You can't come like that to this schoolroom ever again." She didn't ask what happened.
That makes me stop breathing, Arny, when you say that. How horrible to, first of all, have gone through such an experience and then not to have the care afterwards.
Care, the opposite, yeah. I love those people today. I love the kids that wanted to kill me. And the teacher. World work is what we need. We need a large community setting with all sorts of people who can be angry at one another, and we need the talent and ability to resolve issues. That's missing, and I knew it when I was really little.
You said that there were African American kids at that place watching?
These white children wanted to kill me and beat me up. Black kids sitting around the tree at the bottom said, "Don't fall down, they'll kill you." But I don't know what happened then. The next thing, I was just walking as if I was a real mess to school.
I know that those kinds of things that happen to us have the gifts that come later. I just want to say I'm sorry that you had to go through that, and they said you have the wrong God.
Yeah, I didn't know what God was even yet.
Why did they think that you had the wrong God? They just picked you up and decided that?
I didn't know that I had a connection with part of my family is Jewish, but I didn't know that. Apparently my father would sneak off on Sundays and go to his church, or rather synagogue, and come back. I often wondered, why is he leaving before breakfast and coming back? I didn't know that. They must have seen him do that. Otherwise, I had no religion. I wasn't interested in religion at all. Today, I love all the religions, but it wasn't known to me at the time.
So because you were Jewish, you deserve to die.
They thought I was Jewish and wanted to kill me. I love them today.
What do you love
I
about
love them. Thank you. I got back at one of the ringleader later in life, but we need world work. We need a world where we let conflict happen in a very practical way and resolve issues.
So you say you love them.
Yes.
Say more about the process that you went through from that moment as a young boy, almost being killed and being scolded by your teacher, to coming to the place where you can now say you love them. What's the journey to that place?
Well, the journey is I grew up slowly like everybody, and then I saw the ringleader on the football team where I was practicing football when I was in high school. And there he was, we were practicing, the ringleader of the bad guys when I was a child was suddenly on the other side, and I was going to football practice, and I was going to go against him, and I hit him so hard that he went up into the air. And as he was coming down, I didn't want him to break his neck. And I caught his neck and pulled it this way, and he didn't get hurt, but he got almost knocked out. And the problem was resolved for me then. I could get back without hurting anybody. And the football coach said to all the kids, "You gotta be like Mindell. Get out there and make a big whoa when you're in football."
That's an amazing story. When you saw him,
Yeah.
at first you had this feeling, I'm going to get back at him right now.
I
I'm going to get revenge, kind of. What happened from that moment to then deciding to catch him?
I want to hurt him. Makes me almost cry. Reminds me, I don't want him to suffer. I actually love him too. I don't know why. Anyway, I love those people, and somehow they liked me too. I became president of the student council of the whole high school after that.
So, Arny,
Wow.
I want to just ask you one more question. I think there's something that feels so big that in world work, when there's people that are screaming and angry and want revenge.
Good, let it out here without guns. Do it. Yes.
But there's something happened in that process that was like very short period of time. You went from like wanting to hurt to then not wanting to hurt.
Yeah. That's just true. I wanted to kill him and not. And then when I saw he could get really hurt, I said, no. Take care of him. Yeah.
That I wanted to kill him and not feels to me like a package, like a very important package for world work and for all of us. How do we get from that I want to kill somebody to and not?
Bring it out. If you're upset about something with somebody, don't hurt them, but bring it out. If you can really do it without hurting anybody, if you can really do it, something is released and relaxed in you, will relax, if you really let it out carefully, and things can change.
That moment that we shared before, you said, that resolved something for me in that moment.
Yeah.
And now you're explaining how can we all do that?
Yeah. We need to do it each within her and his and their own abilities, of course.
Sure.
I could do it like that, yeah.
It feels like that moment was a huge seed for process work and world work.
Yes.
Right there.
Yes. World work. You got it. Yeah, let's bring out stuff a little bit carefully. Don't hurt anybody. And let's process it. Stop just being upset about the opponents. World work.
You had an early entry into the formation of world work.
Definitely.
I'm very curious to know more about little Arny, other experiences little Arny had as he was growing up, other things, like other memories that you have, or
that was a big one.
parents.
What's parents?
Like experiences you had as a family or with your father or with your mother that you remember.
I loved them. I actually got along with them. And grew up. I was little. I grew up. I became 5 and 6 and 7. And kindergarten and all that. These were the big things I just said. That was the biggest.
What about the rain falling down?
The rain falling down, yeah. Well, it's the earliest thing I can remember. When I was 3 or 4, I noticed rain coming down. And I asked my father, why does it come down? Because the wind goes this way, sideways. Why does it come down? And my father, who was a chemist, scientist, said, let's go to the library. Library at 3? Yeah, he said. So we went, and I found this big, funny-looking books about that big. And I got a little bored with it, but I discovered gravity. You can't see it, but you can feel it. And gravity is what turned me on also later to psychology. You can feel yourself moved by the fields around you, but you can't see them. Gravity.
Dad was like an experiential dad. Arny, I think you're like one of the purest experiential educators I know.
Oh.
And I'm thinking about that moment you had a question and your dad said, come on, let's go let you discover.
Huh. Uh-huh. Wow.
One of the strongest memories that I have in my time in process work, I was at a seminar where you were talking about childhood dreams.
Yeah.
You said something that day that it's been like a kind of mantra for me. Like you said, we are the instruments that are working in the world. And because we're the instruments, we have to develop ourselves as deeply with as much awareness as possible. And I think how you do that as a teacher is very experiential.
Oh, good. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh. Don't just think about things. You got to develop your whole self. That's really well said. Yeah.
Yeah. And your dad started that. Let's go to the library and discover gravity. What did you do for fun as a kid?
Fun? It was the Second World War. You had to turn the lights off early at night and got scared if there were planes going. Fun as a child? Fun? I had one big toy that I got. My brother had it earlier. That was fun. It was a wagon with blocks in it. You could pull it and play with it. But that's about it. Fun. Mm-hmm. Also fun the first day going to kindergarten. An African-American kindergarten girl going in front on the street said, "Hey, don't be afraid to carry my books. Come on out here." And I asked my mother, "Is it okay if I go on the street with somebody?" My mother said, "Sure, follow what you feel."
One of your amazing teachings, Arny, is like even in the worst situation, you can find something good.
Yes.
Look at the other side and see. And so even in World War II, like the wagon, right? The wagon with blocks could bring some joy.
Yeah.
In those times that were so horrible and you had to turn the lights off, what other moments did you have where you could laugh together or play together or have relief from the horribleness?
I would sometimes go and sit and have a soda while I was waiting for my mother, who was working taking care of refugees in Schenectady. She was working taking care of a lot of refugees coming in from the war. But the fun thing is, she said, go have some soda at the White Tower. That doesn't exist anymore, that cafe. And I did, and that was fun. That's the answer. Have a soda in the middle of the mess.
Did you have like a best friend when you were growing up?
Best friends I had? Yeah, I had a couple of them. And I had a girlfriend when I was in then high school, junior high school, and friends. Yeah, a lot of good friends. Mm-hmm.
What'd you do together?
Fight, play, sing, you know. Oh, Amy reminded me just now, one of the most interesting times of my childhood was I had a teacher who gave too much homework, and I didn't like her very much. And so me and a friend, after school, we went and made a little smoke bomb and blew it up near her house and made the white part of her house just a little bit darker. And the police came and said, what happened? We said the teacher wasn't good. Oh, it was good that everybody was somehow happy. I don't understand. The teacher changed.
That's the woof again.
Don't just suffer. Express it in some way that doesn't really hurt the other person. Yeah.
So we're talking about your first memory, your earliest memory that led to all these other stories. How about your earliest childhood dream?
There was a bear who came to me in my childhood dream, and I got scared, and the bear chased me. I was in my father's car playing, and the bear came into the car, and I got scared, and I went out around the car, and the bear was chasing me in ever greater circles around the world. And the bear made me take personal psychology into world work. That's a drive that what's inside needs to be worked on with everybody, everywhere as well. In contrast to my more Jungian-oriented teachers later, who said, no, you don't work with people in a public way with their dreams. And I said, no, dreaming has always been in Africa and everywhere a also public activity to deepen communities. And the bear drives me around the world, which is the reason that I couldn't just practice my beloved Jungian psychology one-to-one, which I love so much, becoming a Jungian. But the bear said, yes, good, but come on, let's broaden psychology to include our planet, which has so much trouble. Wow.
I want to know about high school and becoming president, because that's like a politician kind of desire to become president of a school. Not everyone does that. What interested you in becoming president?
Not much. I just loved people, and it was really good. And I was very difficult for the principal of the school, because I didn't agree with some things he said. And when I was running for president against Linda DePasquale, then very nice young woman, the principal got up and said, "Don't vote for Mindell. He's always getting into trouble." And then Linda said, "Vote for Arny," after the principal went down. And I got to be president of the school.
The principal got up in front of the whole school?
On the stage with Linda and me. Yeah.
And he said, "Don't vote for Mindell."
Don't vote for Mindell. He's always getting into trouble.
What kind of trouble were you getting in?
Well, I had fights earlier in my life, and he heard about that and thought I was the origin of the fights. And he didn't like, I don't know, I didn't have much contact with him. He didn't seem to like me too much. He just felt free to get up and say, "Vote for her, not him."
So you became president?
Well, because she said, "Vote for Arny."
Yeah.
Sweet woman, later she became a nun. Yeah, she was already a nun. I'm a nun too. That's a projection.
How are you a nun, Arny?
I follow nature. Nature is my god or goddess. And I follow that more than the human race, even. Yeah, I love people, but I'm always looking at the sea. We live here near the sea. I look at the sea and the sky, and I watch the clouds moving by. They are my guide. That's how I'm a nun.
Do you remember like a moment when you realized that you follow nature? Like, was there some experience that happened that kind of was the seed of that?
What a great question. Always, my whole life I was like that. Yeah. I started to realize it most consciously, I think, during my Jungian studies in Switzerland, that I didn't just follow my dreams like my teachers said I should. I loved my dreams and followed them. But nature is my guide, my most favorite guide. What others call maybe God or goddess, I call it nature.
How does nature play into how you live your everyday life?
Every evening before I go to bed with Amy, I go out on the deck overlooking the sea and listen to what she has to say to me. Nature, what she has to say. She is my greatest goddess, nature. I listen to the sky, the clouds, the sea. I love people, but I love nature as a guide.
That makes me slow down. And it also touches me, actually, very deeply.
Oh. I can believe it. I can't understand why everybody... I remember some years ago, walking on the beach, I said to somebody else walking, "Why isn't the church and the synagogues and all that stuff looking out at the sea? Why do they always do stuff in the towns, cities?" Anyway, nature is my goddess. I listen to her first. If I have a problem of any kind, physical, psychological, relationship, whatever.
So at nighttime you go to the deck and you look out at the sea.
Yeah.
What about in the daytime as you're going through your life?
Well, I also try to imagine the sea regardless of where I am. Otherwise, I try to be a realistic, everyday person, get uptight, nervous, overwork, and not.
And the sea, you keep saying the sea. What is it about the sea for you?
She rises up. She feels gravity pulling her. And she relaxes and feels the earth's gravity even greater pulling her down. And then the moon comes around again and she feels its gravity moving her. For me, that is one of the most wonderful goddesses. Following the universe around us.
I just keep thinking about the fact that you're a skier.
Yeah.
How did you discover skiing, and what do you love about?
When I was in Switzerland, I saw some people going like quickly down on ski slopes, so I wanted to learn too. So I went up to a mountainside in Amden, in Switzerland, and I followed little girls. I liked them the best, how they were learning to ski like this and like that. That taught me. I never had a teacher. They were my teacher, and I was a little girl too, going like that, and I learned how to ski. And I so appreciate those teachers. They're great.
You started out just learning telemarking?
I started out learning how to ski. Later I learned how to telemark, yeah. It's easier.
How do you feel when you're in the mountains?
Wow. Anywhere I am in nature makes me bow down. The mountains, this is my religious experiences are nature, full of nature. Full of nature. The sea, I love the mountain ski. So it's always a kind of semi-religious experience, which I don't talk about much to people around me when I'm skiing and stuff. But I love it. So I've never had an accident because I listen and follow nature. Even though I never had a ski lesson. Follow nature. She taught me how to ski.
Anything else you want to say about nature being your God?
Nature is my goddess.
Goddess.
Yeah, I could never understand why when you went into the religious houses like a church or a synagogue, God was always male? I thought they were mixed up at first. That's a mistake. Anyway, nature is my goddess. My goddess, I just love her. Yeah, follow her. Everything I do, and process-oriented psychology comes from appreciating, loving nature, the nature of people, not thinking about something in them, but watching their nature, movements, sounds, all of that is as important, or for me, more important than just the content of what they say or even what they dream.
How did you come to not just think about that or experience that, but then you developed that into process-oriented psychology, into process work, right? How did you, most people are here, right? Most modalities.
In their head, yeah, they're in their head.
How did you develop that?
Well, because dreaming, when I started to study Jungian psychology, I love Jung, loved my teachers, but then when I was about 28 or 29, I started to have physical problems in my body, and all the dreaming stuff wasn't helping with that. So then I started to realize the body, too, is dreaming through the movements and the feelings and the so-called illnesses. For me, are not illnesses. All of these things are dreams trying to reach consciousness. And when I started to work with people on these things, after my Jungian studies were done, people got happy.
Started from your own physical ailments or things that were troubling you, and you tried to work on them through your dreams, and things weren't getting better. So then you started to just paid more attention.
I said, maybe the dreaming is not just in your head at night, it's in your body all day long. And that was the beginning of the concept of the dream body and process-oriented psychology.
So Arny, from your ailments that you had at 28 or 29, what was the research that you began to do on yourself that was the beginnings of the dream body?
Well, I had pain in my foot. I had a gout at that time, what they called a gout attack. Too much meat, not enough other things. And so I had a little bit of a gout. I never had one again. But I had a little bit of a gout attack, and my dreams didn't help. So I started to work with my foot. My foot said, there's pain inside of me, and I'm so sensitive, and I want to break out, my foot said to me. And then I realized the dreaming body is the point. We need to go further.
What happened next? What did you do in your research?
I started to feel it and let it express itself, the pain that was in there. And it wanted to break out and do things. And that's really how I developed the dream body concept, that your body is dreaming and wants consciousness to come to it and help it.
So you're in Switzerland when you're 28 or 29 and this is happening. You're at the Jung Institute studying to be a Jungian analyst?
Yeah.
How did you get there? How did you get to Switzerland and start being interested in Jungian analysis?
Well, during my college days, had the chance to go visit Switzerland as an exchange student for 1 year. Then I was offered the chance to just continue my research at MIT, and I'll give you a PhD, the doctors said, the professor said, because you can solve equations I can't. And I said, thanks a lot, but no, I want to go back and study dreams and psychology. What? He said, yep. And I went.
So physics just comes into the story.
Yeah.
So you went to college and you studied physics in college?
I studied physics and science and the liberal arts at the same time. Then went to MIT.
How did you get interested from being at MIT and studying physics and stuff to being interested in dreams?
I like everything. Not one thing. Physics I love still, but psychology is really juicy. And yes, and yes, and yes. How can you study psychology without studying physics? And how can you study physics without knowing who you are that's developing ideas?
What do you love about physics?
Oh, what a question. I think physics is so sexy. What I love about it is you can start to explore, where did we come from? What are atoms? What are nuclei? What's the subatomic nature of the world? And how does it get to be looking real? I love that big question.
So I'm so curious, like, what the first thing was about physics that drew you to it.
Nature. What's it all about? What's the sky made out of? Why does the rain fall down? What is the nature of nature? That's why I liked physics. It wasn't enough because it had nothing to do with psychology. Physics has a problem. It's too one-sided. It's all about theoretical physics, quantum phenomena, Newtonian physics, that's the larger stuff, but had nothing to do with how you feel. Who the hell is looking at nature? How does the observer, not just through quantum effects, change the situation, but how about the psychology of the person as well? Anyway, putting all these things together was my interest.
How did you get interested in psychology?
Oh, what a great question. How did I get interested in psychology? Oh my God. Wow. I never thought of that. How? Since I was a little boy, I always wondered, why do I dream? Who am I? And who are other people? I wanted to understand people more. How did I get interested in it? Well, physics, I love physics. But the people were missing. Anyway, I love people, I love dreams. I want to know, who am I? Where am I coming from? What's behind me? What's behind you and everybody? Psychology came from those questions.
What was your first doorway into psychology? What was the next doorway?
Well, the first doorway then was, ooh, where can I learn some psychology? Yummy. I found Jungian psychology in Zurich and von Franz, and who was one of Jung's favorites. And I loved it. Fantastic, but wasn't any body in it yet. And no movement and no relationship work or group work. So I had to change it a little bit. Develop process-oriented psychology.
How did you find Jungian psychology particularly?
I was studying physics at the ETH in Zurich as an exchange student. And there was an African-American minister in my student house. And I said to him one day, how come you're so happy today? Oh, I was in analysis. He said, I didn't know what that was yet. And I said, with what, with whom? And so that's how I met Marie-Louise von Franz, best-known Jungian analyst in Switzerland at the time.
And how long did you get to work with her?
Well, I had to wait a couple of months, then I was her analysant, her client, and I worked with her a few years and became a Jungian analyst in Zurich, and still was very close with her for years and years, until I started developing process-oriented psychology, which was evolving from Jungian psychology. she wasn't too happy about that. So we sort of quietly and in a friendly way said, okay. And process work came out of all of that.
What was she unhappy with in terms of your evolution from Jungian to process work?
She said Jung wouldn't have liked to work with the body and people in public. And I said, no, I dreamed he did want that. And so I was breaking out of the conventional mold of that time, following my dreams about Jung, not the Jungian analysis stuff over there, following the deepest dreaming.
Can you share the dreams that you had about Jung in that regard?
Jung was almost dying in one of my dreams, and he was lying on the ground, and he grabbed me like that, and he pulled me down and breathed into me his last breath. Like that. And I woke up and thought, wow, what's that about? Jung is still alive in a way. In me. I love him. Amazing. If I love something or somebody, I have to breathe them in. The same with physics, yeah.
What a dream.
Yeah, big dream. Woof. Dreams.
Jung breathed his final breath into you, and so you carried the dream on.
I don't think people really die. There's nothing wrong with death, but I don't think they completely die. There's nothing wrong with dying, that's a good thing, but no, something about us is beyond where we are just now. That's why I love dreams and dreaming. The dreaming part of us goes on, even after apparently people are dead. But that's another subject, a research thing I'm in the middle of just now. I'll talk about that in a year or two.
Can you just say what the research is that you're in?
Noticing exactly what people say, do, feel, and dream as they are dying. It's amazing. Empirical evidence from people, even those who hate psychology. I love it. Like, I'll just mention one dream of someone who, a man, an older man who was dying, who hated psychology, said to his daughter, just as he was dying, "Did you buy the tickets?" What? She said, to what? To go across the United States, get them. And then he died, which indicates clearly he died, but you know, even somebody who hates psychology dreamed that at the very end. They're on a trip. We are alive, but there's a spirit in us that moves with us and may well go on a little later too. Amy said, remember one of my first analyzants who came to me because I was a Jungian interested in the body stuff. And this young man came, he was dying, was so upset. "I'm gonna die," he said. "Tell me a dream." And he dreamed that he was by his own grave. he saw the body in the coffin, and he was dancing around the grave on the outside, and most people couldn't see it. Things like that, again and again, make you think, yes, I am this, you are that, and maybe not just a physical thing. Maybe we are a pattern in the air. Gee, we're talking about deep stuff here.
What are some other big dreams that you've had with Jung?
With Jung, other big dreams with him? Many years ago, he did tell me, put psychology and physics together in a dream. He wanted that. He had tried, he didn't know how. The Nobel Prize winner, Pauli, in Switzerland, wanted analysis just before he died. He worked with von Franz and Jung. And Jung got really interested. Can we put physics and psychology together? And that interests me. That's always been in the background. Everything we do that's how the body work came. Physical, but psychological in the sense of dreaming. How the dreaming moves the physical self.
So that's a kind of foundational combination of process-oriented psychology.
Well said. It's a foundation idea, yeah.
How long were you a Jungian analyst before you broke away and started process work?
I was a Jungian analyst from the age of conventionally Jungian analyst with a normal degree in Jungian psychology from the age of 30 till about forever. But then I started developing process work when I was about 35. At the same time, I called it expanding Jungian psychology. But von Franz said, no, that's not Jungian to work with the dreams and body stuff in public. And I said, I don't agree. And so we were great friends, but then we started having a little separation.
What were you doing working with people in public? What were you actually doing there?
Asking them what they dreamed, and then working with their body problems. What are your body doing? What does it feel like? And is there something of that dream in your body experiences that you're saying now? And the Dreambody came out of that, my book, The Dreambody.
When was that published, The Dreambody?
When I was 30. So, my God, that's more than 50 years ago. Holy moly. How did I get to be in my 80s?
What did von Franz think about the Dreambody book when it came out?
She liked it. She thought it was really good. That book was good. But then when other books started coming out that were now developing different aspects, bringing in different channels of awareness and what have you, she wasn't that excited anymore. She thought I was leaving Jung, and I told her, no, this is Jung going on. I don't blame her at all. I love her, and I love Jung, and I understand them all.
So the work you were doing with people in groups, talking about their dreams and working with their bodies, that started in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And people were having really positive experiences. And then what happened?
Deep experiences. And so I began to develop what I called process-oriented psychology. Follow the person and the dreaming process as it moves us everywhere and around. That was fun. And I saw a lot of people began to like it and pick it up. Surprised me. I had no interest in developing a new psychology. It's none of my business. It just happens.
How did it just happen?
Creative stuff comes out of your head. You write it down, play with it, experiment with it, try it, change it, write it down, and publish it. Out. What works needs to be seen and heard.
Thank you for doing that again and again and again and again.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a lot of fun. I thank you. I thank everybody. Everybody I know is my teacher. What they do, what they suffer from, who they are, what makes them happy. Nature. This is my teacher.
Something that you said about the development of process work, like when you were at the Jung Institute, you had ideas that were coming, and then you would play with the ideas, and then you would write them down, and you would, do more playing and more writing, and then you would publish.
And practice and test my ideas, that they're not just ideas, that they're actually facts in the sense of human life. They work with it.
I want to know about how did you do that? How did that look, the testing and the practicing and the testing? With who did you practice and test with? And what was happening? Like, what was the process around that?
I have an idea, like one of the first big ideas was the Dreambody. Until then, there were just dreams in Jungian psychology. And then I said, well, I'm sure Jung would have liked to have his body in here too. And everybody would too. I got a body, I got problems with my body. Is that a problem, or is there a dream behind what I'm calling body sensations? The research part of me. Let's look and see what happens if a person really dreams into their body problem and describes it. Out of all of that came the dream body concept. We don't have just a body, we have a dreaming body moved by dreams. And if you don't know that and live that way, you'll have to be nervous or a little depressed. And if you know you're being moved by dreaming, you're going to have a little bit more fun.
When you're in Switzerland and you're having this idea and then you think, I got to test this out, how would you test it? Would you test it with individual clients? Would you test it in workshops with people? Like, how did you do that?
First with myself, then with those closest to me. You got a body problem? Let's try this and try that. Then with my clients. Oh, it works, look. Then workshops and everything. Wow, let's write a book about it. That's how I do things. It's the empirical scientist in the background. Not just an idea, but can I see that it works, and can at least some people practice it? And if the answer is yes, write a book about it.
friendship with Freud. Were you interested in Freud?
I loved Freud's ideas and started studying them when I was 9 years old.
9 years old?
Yes, because my brother was interested in psychology. He wanted to become a psychiatrist later and did. But I started reading Freud. He had a book that was 500 pages long when I was 9 or 10 and read it. And I told Carl, my brother, I don't think Freud knows much about people because it doesn't fit quite so well. I love Freud, but it wasn't quite right. Mm-hmm.
What didn't fit so well for you?
Well, first of all, that people had to lie back in the couch and stuff. It's good. But the rest of it, it's a long story. It just didn't fit very well. I'm more empirical about dreams and body and reality. I don't want to tell people anything about their sexual life and stuff unless it comes up in their dreams and all. Yeah, follow what's happening. Study it, appreciate it, notice it, bring it up to consciousness. Not just dreams coming to consciousness, but notice the little tiny things that move you and bring them up to be a whole and happier person.
Can you say more about that? What you just said right there, think about the little things. You're thinking not just about sleeping dreams, right?
Right, the dreaming process behind the sleeping dreams is these little tiny things that move you and you feel, and that you can move little weird movements and feelings and thoughts. And if you study and let yourself move and follow the sensations in your body and what have you, before you go to bed, chances are your whole dreaming process will be clearer to you. You don't really need a therapist. If you believe in what's happening to you and try to make it conscious. Of course, a therapist can always support that in you.
How did that develop? These tiny things that move you. You're basically saying to us, hey people.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Wake up. Wake up to the dreaming process that's happening all day and all night. And be a deeper, weirder person, a little tiny bit weirder. Go into your dreaming process.
In the evolution of your own ideas and your own thinking about that, it started with the body and noticing that beyond dreams, our bodies are dreaming, and if we pay attention to our bodies, we can find answers. We can find answers that are beyond, right? So this next step is like...
Well, the next step after following your own details and body stuff for me was to do it in relationship also. Now, my Jungian teacher said, you can't talk about the dreaming process in public with others. And I said, well, if you were from Africa, everybody makes dreaming a public, deep experience. And I want to also. Von Franz was a little nervous about the public. No, bring your dreaming out in public. What's moving you? Who are you? Don't just try to be a normal person only. That's okay, but boring. There's always something happening, a dreaming wanting to come. You'll notice it in your body sensations. your hand, your feelings, bring it out. Change the world. Don't just be a normal person fighting with another person. That's a good beginning, but go deeper.
Why did Jungian psychology or von Franz and others think you can't work with things in public, with people in public?
Why did they think that? In part because they were Swiss, and Switzerland people are more introverted, which I loved, and I honor it. I think it's fantastic. But then they didn't think of following the dreaming process in the person all day long in their bodies and in relationships. It was just the next step into the development of psychology.
You know, you brought Africa in. In Africa, the dreaming is a public activity.
It's part of the community. You can't have a really good community without the community being allowed to dream and dance the dreaming. That influenced me also why I didn't want to just stay with individual psychology, relationship work, and then how about the whole community working together, what I called later world work.
Can you just share a little bit about how the progression happened for you in terms of your empirical research? What happened there?
The progression from one of these things to the next? I don't know. I don't understand it. I was studying the body. That was good. But how do you bring the body into relationships? I always was very empirical. Here I am in a relationship. What are my hands doing? What are they doing now? They want to express themselves. Find the dreaming not just at night, but in relationships. And then in community, the same thing. How can you have a community that isn't encouraged to bring the dreaming process out more? How? Watch what people do. Watch what they talk about. In the past, Trump, the U.S. president, was a popular name, people would say, but that was a secondary process of the group at that moment. Let's be President Trump and be the boss. It was a secondary process they weren't following yet. Dreaming all the time with everybody, life and death. I love it. Makes you think.
How did that come to be developed in your life experience?
I don't know. First, I always loved dreams, but dreams are coming from someplace. What is it? It doesn't have any images in it. So Jung didn't talk about that, but I don't need just images. Go deep down into yourself as if you were you're not asleep, but carefully into yourself and let things arise to bring the dreaming out into reality. Don't wait till the nighttime to bring out the dreams. So I just studied then the body, dreams, dream body, relationships, all of that, world work. Simple.
I'm thinking about world work and conflict and your relationship with Amy. I've heard you say that you don't fight much at all. What did you do in your relationship that you could offer to others that results in connecting with love for each other?
What do you think, Amy? I should say, you should say. I should say. Whenever we have any tension, which we don't, in my mind we don't anymore, but when we had tension, process work, role switching. How am I on her side? Can I understand her viewpoint? Where is she coming from? And that is very helpful, the understanding of the other side, and watch my own signals. Like right now they're going like this, which means bow to her nature. It's a spontaneous thing. Follow your signals and the other person's signals, and your relationship will be better.
Before you met Amy, were you married before?
I had what you might call a marriage, and had 2 little kids whom I love, but I wouldn't have called it quite a marriage. But then, to make the story short, Amy came along and that was it.
How about your kids? Tell us a little about your kids.
The little kids got to be bigger. Great kids. Both went into psychology and live in Switzerland now. Happily married and doing stuff in Zurich, have their own little group, doing wonderfully. The other lives up in the mountains, also works in Zurich. She married a Swiss mountain peasant. Kids are doing great. And grandkids.
You have grandkids?
Grandkiddies.
How many grandkiddies do you have?
2 at the moment, but who knows what's going to happen.
Boys, girls?
Girlies.
How did you get from Switzerland back to the United States? What brought you back to the United States?
What a great question. Well, yeah, I began to work with Marie-Louise von Franz, and then moved on. And it was Jung himself in a dream. Amy and I were in bed together in the dream in Switzerland, and he came and tickled the bottom of her feet and my feet. And he said, I want you now to go back to the United States and begin things there. That's why I moved back. We moved back and began the PROCESSWORK Institute here, and now it's in many places in the world.
And when you first came back from the United States, where did you go? Where did you come back to?
When I came back from Switzerland to the United States, at first we were just in a little apartment in Florence looking around, and then we went up the coast a little to yachts. Wow, what a place to live. Nobody was here at the time and everything was inexpensive. Let's buy a house here. And then at the same time, PROCESSWORK needs a bigger center, not on the coast, but in a city like Portland. The PROCESSWORK Institute began.
Wow.
Way back, yeah. And now it's all over the world, PROCESSWORK, yeah.
More than 25 training centers around the world. How does Esalen fit into your journey?
Well, the Esalen people invited me to come to Esalen and be its leader. Thereafter, their previous leader, Dick Price, had died. So Amy and I first went to Esalen to be its leaders, and we did. But it was fun, and I loved Esalen. But I wanted to go further, and then just that, and develop a whole school.
For people that don't know, what is Esalen?
Esalen was one of the best known psychological and training centers in the world. A great place in California.
During your time there, did you develop any new empirical aspects of process work?
Always developing empirical aspects of process work and wanting to go further, way beyond just a little organization like that. So we moved to Portland eventually, yeah.
At that time, was world work already started?
Beginning. It was beginning. We'd have little or big group processes, and those processes got bigger and better as things went along. World work developed slowly after that, yeah.
You've had world work seminars all over the world.
Everywhere.
Can you speak a little bit about your own initial vision for world work? What did a world work gathering look like when you first developed it?
World work was what was missing for me in the world. There's a lot of dictators and a lot of people feeling they're saviors. Great. But there's no dreaming together in the public situation, especially in conflict. So let's bring people together. Let's bring the conflict partners right out in the middle. Woof. And then watch what they do, listen to what they say, follow their signals, follow the process, and change the world by having everybody learn how to do that more. It was good.
When did you develop the 4 phases of conflict?
Oh.
How does that help relationships and world work?
Well, you just study people, study conflicts. They like to fight each other or avoid fighting. Another point, if things go deeper, they can role switch. If you can do that, I promise you'll have half the fights. Role switching. And then after that, go deepest to the deepest phase and let the universe move you. And I promise you, your relationship will be better. There's other details, but I won't go into all of that just now.
When you think, Arny, about all of the world work seminars that you've run around the world, can you share some of the moments that felt really transformational and or really difficult?
Oh my God, there's so many. But one of the first ones I remember was in San Francisco years ago, in Oakland, California, yeah. We were working on racial issues, racial tensions. Some black person had been killed, and there was all sorts of the police and this and that. And Amy and I and others went down to San Francisco, and this large group of people of all colors and races got together, and I said, let's let it out here, not just on the streets. And people were screaming and yelling, I hate you. You killed my friends. You're the killers. And that stuff, and then suddenly, in the corner, still makes me almost cry, somebody began to sing in the Black community. They started singing. And bit by bit, more people started to sing in the middle of this tense situation. And to make the story short, the process of singing led to coming together and actually forming a hands-on community where we were killing each other before. Oh, that comes to mind. World work. I loved it. And from that, many things came.
It takes me back to your childhood big events.
Oh. How?
That story that you just told, it's like the same. That's world work. You have the anger and the violence, and you need to go into that to come to the singing.
Yes. On both sides. Let the aggressor be aggressive up to a point in the community. Hear the other side. Change the world. We can do it.
Tell me a few more stories from world work.
Just before the peace treaty in Ireland, we had a large group process, and men from the opposite sides were screaming and yelling. And then there was a big red cheek, and one night I said, "What is that?" He said, to make it real short, "I'm sick and dying." And the other man said, "I'm not well either." And they both looked at each other, these conflicting partners. And they kind of came together. And the whole community there in Ireland came together. Wow. That's an unthinkable world work. It actually works. It's amazing. Anyway, those are a couple of incidents worth repeating. Thank you for your questions.
I would like to ask you, Arny, to share a little bit with us about some of the jobs that you had before you went to study physics, or maybe it was while you were studying physics. Tell us about your job at the Knowles Research Lab.
Oh, well, I graduated college really high, summa cum laude and all that kind of stuff with the best numbers in both the arts and the languages. And so I got a job right away at the General Electric Research Laboratory in Schenectady, where your job was simply to appear. You didn't have to do anything. They wanted you to play and use your intelligence to see if it developed new things. So that was one of my most fun jobs. And
so what did you do exactly?
I just went in and started to play with and experiment with different kinds of physics and engineering things. And some of them led to discoveries and useful things later on.
So you just followed yourself with whatever interested you?
Whatever, including nothing.
Can you share anything about like what you were working on and what it developed into?
I developed or helped with others to develop new kinds of video microscopic stuff that could see just about anything.
When did you work at the Buffalo airport?
Buffalo Air Force Base. I was given a job to do whatever, and I helped them to develop the runway for airplanes. So when the airplanes landed, they wouldn't bump so much. It's a big thing, very big, because where airplanes land on the runway's often split, and there's all sorts of repair work usually that has to be done quickly, except where I developed something different there.
Do you want to share more about your time at MIT as a physicist and things that may have happened that would be interesting for people to know about?
Well, I went to MIT to get my master's, and I had to study many, many hours every day, because that isn't so simple, that place. It was great. And for some reason, I did really well. And I got my master's degree with honors. And the professor, who was my professor, said, please stay and I'll give you a PhD if you do this and this and this and this. And I said, I'd love to, but I have to follow my dreams and go and become a Jungian psychologist, and then later went further than that. So that was MIT. He said, what? You're going to go study psychology? Yeah, physics and engineering are great, but how about putting the worlds together? They're so separated. Okay, so I went to Switzerland.
And you ended up getting a PhD in psychology.
Yeah.
What did you do your thesis in?
Well, I don't know anymore.
Synchronicity.
What?
Synchronicity.
Oh, Amy reminds me, I did a PhD thesis on synchronicity. When things come to you, dream something, other thing, they come together synchronistically. Apparently, I wrote a PhD on that.
What do you think today about synchronicities?
I don't think they happen just now and then. I think the whole of life is synchronistic. If you're deep enough in yourself, you can feel, as you probably know and others know, you feel stuff happening as it's happening or even before. So I love the idea of synchronicity, but I want to go deeper in psychology also.
Say more about that?
Follow not just your consensus reality self, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. Follow the dream-like dreams you had and the dreaming sensations in your body, little funny things, follow that. And drop down deeper and let the essence level, I call it the universe, move you. To know who you are and to know how to do things as much as possible.
And that deeper way that you just described, synchronicities are embedded within that, plus much more.
When you do that and go deep into yourself and feel yourself being moved and not just moving because you think you should, the concept of synchronicity becomes a one-time thing instead of the feeling of living synchronistically, or the Taoists, the ancient Taoists would have called it, being in the Tao, knowing and following what's happening.
So it's very dynamic, by the way you're describing. It's a dynamic, ongoing process that never ceases.
Never.
some of the things that you do, some of the talents that you have, like you're a skier and you're a runner. What other secret talents do you have that we don't know about?
Amy says I'm an artist and painter.
Tell us about that, Arny.
I can only show it to you. Here comes one of my paintings. Amy found it on the wall over the fireplace. Can you see it?
That's amazing. Yeah. When did you do that, Arny? Do you know when you did it or what inspired it?
Years ago, just playing around. I don't do things like that seriously. I just let them happen. Like everything. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Amy, for getting the picture.
When you say I just fool around, I'm curious. I think there are many kinds of practices that it takes to become skilled to be a process worker. Some of those things that are just fooling around, it seems like they're also following process.
Relax. When you want to do something creative, for a couple minutes at least, relax if you can. Take it easy and wait to see where your energies move you and let them dance you while sitting or dancing, and let them paint for you, and let them create new ideas. Very simple, elementary idea. Follow nature.
Are those ways, whether it's moving or painting or writing, are those ways of following and dreaming in that way of bringing like our unconscious conscious?
That if C.G. Jung were alive now, and he is in a way, hi C.G., he would have said definitely, using your language, it's a way of making the unconscious conscious, bringing up the dreaming in the essence level, we would say. Very important. And very important to do it all the time, not just in art, but in relationships. If you get stuck, let go, go deeper, and watch what the dreaming wants to do with you in contact with others. That way you don't have any conflicts.
Who's Franz Ricklin? How did he come into your life? Isn't there a story about that guy?
How do you know about him?
Because you mentioned him in workshops before, so there must be another story there somewhere.
Well, one day, should I tell you?
Please.
One day, I went to have a cup of coffee outdoors at the Kunsthaus Cafe in Switzerland, in Zurich, because that's where I like to have a cup of coffee. It was inexpensive, and you could sit outside. And I was not too happily married at the time. So I was looking at the skirts going by, women, and I would say, And then I saw a man a couple of tables down, also having coffee at the Kunsthaus Cafe, which is a central cafe in Zurich, even today. And I would look at him, and he was looking at women going by. And I said to him for some reason, that one's not for you. And he laughed. And he came and looked at me and he said, that one's not right for you. See, I was not happily married. I was looking for Amy, but she wasn't there yet. So I said, hey, buddy, let's sit at the same table. Okay, he said. I said, what's your name? He said, Franz. Yeah, Franz Rick. I said, and what do you do for a living? I'm the president of the Jung Institute. What? Oh, I have an analysis with a Jungian analyst, Marie-Louise von France. Oh, he said, I have dinner with her every Saturday evening. Jung told me before he died and told them we should always have dinner Tuesday evenings at their house. Franz Ricklin, Marie-Louise von France, and Barbara Hanna having dinner. I met Ricklin there at the cafe outside. He was my favorite. We talked about everything. He said, maybe you want some analysis. Absolutely. And I went over to his office, very official. But it was the same kind of analysis as the street experience. Just following the moment. He was very process-oriented. And eventually, I began to actually develop process-oriented psychology, following the moment and the person, as well as their dreams. He had a nice official practice as a psychiatrist. I would go in and sit in the waiting room, but when I went in to work with him, he talked about his wife and their problems to me. I said, is this Jungian analysis? He said, yeah, my wife, this and that. And coming down the stairs every day, he said, in his house, I won't go into details. I loved that person. He taught me about dreaming in reality without naming it. He never asked me to interpret a dream. He was really amazing. I said, how did you ever go through medical school? You're not very normal in the way you work. He said, I went to CG, that means Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, for analysis, and said, I don't know how I'm going to graduate my final exam in medical school, CG, what should I do? And Jung thought for a moment and said, put the medical book under your pillow at night. And Ricklin said, and almost cried, I did it. And I passed my medical exams the next day. It almost makes me cry. He was such a beautiful human being. It wasn't just Jung out there, he was like that too. Whew. That was my second analyst, officially speaking.
It seems like the way that he worked with you helped you evolve the way that you work with people.
Yeah. I said, hey, he's very process-oriented, even though he doesn't say it. So, what is that? Anyway, then I began to study the science of process work and follow signals. He lived another couple years, and he wasn't well. He had a bad heart, and he died when he was very young yet. Maybe in his early 50s, yeah.
And how about Von France?
We started to work together. She was very good at analyzing dreams. I loved it. And then as I started to go along with her, I began to want to look at the body signals. There she was, a little nervous. And so our relationship began to be a little bit more separated as I developed process work.
Do you have any pets when you were growing up?
No, I didn't. We couldn't afford it. They're expensive. So I waited till my first marriage, which wasn't perfect, and then I bought Cleopatra, that's a dog, for $3. She was underneath the back axle of a farmer's truck in the United States. I said, I like that dog. He said, you have to pay $3. Okay. I bought Cleopatra, brought her with me, and she would sit in the apartment while I was working as a therapist in my office. And apparently she knew when I was going to come home and would jump on the door like that and start woofing, whoop! And I would come, she knew timing somehow. Anyway, that was Cleopatra.
Saved you skiing.
Yeah. Oh, Amy says to remind me too that why I took her skiing when I was learning, and she had a little trouble in the deep snow, but I was skiing near a cliff in the neighborhood of the Matterhorn, something like that, and fell near the cliff in the deep snow. Uh-oh. Oh dear, what's going to happen? And Cleopatra, the dog, jumped in and out of the deep snow down from where she had been and grabbed my neck collar and pulled. I don't know how with those little paws and the deep, anyway, she saved my life. Well, at least saved me from falling over the cliff. Pulled me up.
What kind of dog was Cleo?
Woof, she was a woof dog. She was a mixture of collie and this and that, God knows what. She was a mess and a gorgeous thing.
What an amazing story.
Yeah, she was good. And with world leaders, I would work with, I don't know why they came to see me. I mean, literally, the leaders, I can't say too much, of different countries, let's put it like that, would come and seek my help in Switzerland when I was working there. And one day I was working with this world leader, let's call it. Amazing. And Cleopatra threw up the dog behind him. Oh, dear. There's a world leader. I'm not loose enough to throw up or clean it up. And I said, hey, world leader, you and I together, let's clean up the mess that Cleopatra made. And that broke through my shyness with these big people, and it was really, came out unusually good.
That's an amazing story, and one of your amazing gifts, Arny, as just following the moment and following what happens and making it useful through the experience, right, in the moment.
I don't know if that was a gift or if it was just I had to do it. Somebody throws up behind one of the world leaders and you ask that guy to get down on hands and knees and clean up the throwing up of a dog? Yes. It's just what was needed, and that country leader integrated it a little bit shortly thereafter. I can't go into the details, how to get down with people in the mess and not just them working it out.
How did world leaders find you?
Well, the first one, I was working with this woman who was the cousin of one of the greatest world leaders of the time, and he was having troubles, let's call it, and asked her where to get help. And since Switzerland was an independent place, you could go and more safely than to other countries, these people would come to see me in Switzerland and sit in my practice and work with me, even when my dog was throwing up.
So these are leaders from other parts of the world that would come to Switzerland.
Yes, yes, big so-called world bosses.
Could you, without divulging confidentiality, just share a little bit more about the kinds of themes that they would come to you to work on, and the kind of like help that you gave them that maybe made a difference in terms of what they did?
A lot of it was personal. They didn't know that psychology could be used as a public powerful thing in world work like things yet. So they came for personal reasons, and I helped them with that, and slowly developed world work while working with them, telling them how they should work also with, I can't say details, their governments and world situations. And it worked.
So today you continue to work with world leaders.
Yeah, at the end and at the beginning of the day, we're just normal human beings, and our cultures and communities are very different, but they're very same when it comes to organizational and group process work. The stuff we learn, the basic stuff, fits everywhere and into every culture, including the African cultures that I work with, have worked with.
What questions do you have about world work in your continuing empirical research, and what do you feel are the future developments of world work?
First of all, I would like world work, which means group process, large group process for businesses, for relationships, businesses, organizations. I've used it with governments, between government members of the different governments. It's been very helpful everywhere.
What questions do you have currently about world work in your continuing empirical research?
The most interesting question is how to help different organizations realize the consensus reality situation isn't the whole picture, and how to encourage them to pick up the dreaming and what have you in a way that doesn't make them afraid. That's a very big issue right now for me, and it's good and fun.
Have you been able to do that kind of work with organizations over the pandemic on the internet?
Many, and it's been good.
We can't touch each other. We can see signals sort of above the waist, but we can't see the whole body. So for you, how is that being?
Listening to your voice and the way you speak makes me feel your whole body. Not exactly the same, but we don't touch, and direct contact is very important, But there's many ways to do that besides physical contact. Auditory experience can also be very, very deep, as I know from working with hundreds of people everywhere.
I'm thinking about your childhood dream and that experience of the bear chasing you around the world, that movement. And can you just share a little bit about what you feel about that bear chasing you around the world?
Well, when I was a little boy, we were very, very poor. I remember the only argument I ever saw between my parents was my father yelling at my mother for spending 25 cents for buying a new piece of glass for the window that had broken, because we didn't have any money when I was very little. And so I was always interested in helping people, then learning how to make money later on and stuff like that. The bear part of me does these things, these little things, and then says, come on, let's bring this and help the whole planet. How do you do that? I said to the bear. Shut up and follow me. And I did. And then one thing led to the other, and then Amy and I have been around the planet 20 times since we were married. And now I just love the internet. We can do all that work online with hundreds and hundreds of people.
You just talked about going around the world with Amy like 20 times. And I know that your empirical research took you many places around the world to study with shamans and other special teachers, studying different things and different peoples. Can you tell us about some of those experiences that you had and what they taught you, how they informed the development of process work?
Well, we went to India and saw some very special gurus, stuff like that. But I didn't learn much about how to follow myself. And then when we were in Africa, we met shamans, wonderful people. But I want to know how to follow me, how I can be a shaman with myself. So they helped me to develop awareness ideas to follow ourselves. That's process work in a very brief description.
What were the things that you actually learned that helped you follow yourself deeper and deeper?
It was belief in what I experience. What's going on? What do I experience? What do you experience? Following that is the best of all shamanisms.
So the kind of the more subtler and nuanced things that we learn to pay attention to.
Yeah, and follow. Unfold them, encourage them, and then play with them until they become actual conscious things beyond the dreaming realm.
That's like your deepest teaching right there, I feel.
What's that, would you say?
Learning how to first become aware internally what's happening and to follow and to unfold and to keep on. And
yes, you got it.
How did you become so interested in that?
Because the gurus on the outside, I met a lot in all the different countries we've been in. I love them all, but inside of each of us, we have that potential. And they are good and okay, but there's nothing like following the deepest part of yourself and learning to believe in it and follow it a little bit when you're ready.
It reminds me of like you being at the Jung Institute in Zurich, and you loved Jungian analysis, and you learned so much, and you discovered what was missing. And you went and studied with all these gurus, and you learned many, many things from them, but you also learned what was missing, and that took you into to learning more about that, about the missing elements and developing the missing elements.
You got it. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that goes on, that research. I love it. What are we experiencing? What's the deepest thing? How can you bring it up not just for yourself and body problems, but how can you bring it up for relationships? And can you use it in large group world work-like things? The answer is yes. It just takes a little awareness work.
How has life been for you over the time of the pandemic?
I love it. Don't have to travel around the world. I can see everybody on the internet and talk to them also, and do seminars with many hundreds of people that way. So it's nothing like visiting the people directly, but it's pretty good. And it's a lot cheaper than air flights all over the place, and better for the atmosphere of the planet. No airplane mess.
What have you been doing in Yahats over the pandemic?
Always researching, studying, asking the dreaming what it wants me to discover and develop. And that I have been doing and will be working on again and again, and especially in the seminars classes coming up.
Can you give any kind of hint about what you're working on right now? What the dreaming is telling you to work on right now?
Well, it's about how to work in relationships and world issues deeper and more sustainably.
Tell us what you do when you're out in the world with people.
I'm always dreaming. What do you say, Amy? Tell me. She says, I relate to everybody like they're my family. And come on.
Hi.
Hi.
I think that's one of the most exciting things about this amazing man.
Wow.
Is that everywhere we go, we've been to so many countries, so many places.
That's true.
Or just here on the Oregon coast. And anytime we're outside, whether we're going for a run or we're walking to a seminar or whatever, Arny treats everyone we encounter like it's his family.
They are my family.
I know you feel that everybody's your family.
Everybody.
First time we went to Japan, Arny felt everyone was his family.
Always.
Well, you do have some Asian background, but so if somebody needs help or is just looking at something and staring at something like at the sea, he has to go up and talk about the sea with that person and engage with them. Or if somebody needs help, somebody had a very bad accident and he has to always run right up to the accident or run up to anybody who's in trouble and get right in there and help everyone. Or if we're walking down the road, I remember in any city, and the sewer or the drainage thing in the gutter in the street, if it's clogged and it's raining and it's a mess, he's got to stop, even if we're late for a seminar, and clean it. He becomes the cleaning person. And I remember in a Zen temple, he was raking the stones or doing something. But that it's a phenomenal and touching thing, Cathy, that everywhere you go, it's something that people don't always see about you.
It's all my family and
it's really totally
and my
genuine.
Home. Everything is my home, this world.
Yeah. So every move and everything is very much related to that. And it's something I've never encountered in another person. It's like everything that you talk about is living all the time. It's not just compartmentalized into therapy or into seminars or, or whatever. But it's a living reality, and that's how I experience you.
Wow.
At home too. If I'm probably saying too much, but if what we call a ghost role comes up, like we start to gossip about someone else, I start to really get into the gossip, and Arny will say, "Well, I'm going to be that person," and he'll jump into that right away. It's not just something we do with people in a world work seminar or something. It's something that happens all the time. You do it all at home all the time. So that's, to me, a very beautiful
It's a
thing.
ghost role, or dreaming in public. Let's bring the dreaming up everywhere.
Yeah. So it's all, the theory and the ideas are a living reality rather than just done, in certain times or certain places. So I think that's beautiful.
As I listen to you sharing that, it feels like, Arny, like you're a walking world work. You're living world work every day, every moment, in all these ways as you look out.
I feel everybody on the earth, whether they're lying on the street or the head of a government, they're all my family.
Yeah.
Don't I?
Oh, totally.
And I treat them like that.
Totally. If there are any street people who are walking by, you never walk by them. He always goes up. If we can give them, if they want something, we sometimes can do that. But in general, you always relate to them and take a lot of time, and that you say besides anything they might need, they need the interaction and friendship and to really connect. And you do that with everybody.
Because I have to. The world is my family.
Exactly. So
You get involved in conflicts on the street too, right?
Yeah. That's fun.
Totally.
I love it. Scary sometimes, but fun.
He'll get right in there because he figures somebody needs to help here and try to, it's part of all of us. It's not just the people, but if it's on the street, all of us
are
have
meant,
a part in that.
Are meant to see it.
Like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of good trouble or not good trouble did you get into with your brother Carl together as you were growing up?
Oh, we loved each other. And when I was 10, he wanted to study psychology. He was older than me. So one of my first memories is his studying Sigmund Freud. He gave me Freud's book when I was 10. And I read it, and I thought Freud hasn't studied people enough yet. So it's one of my first memories with my brother. Yeah, Carl.
When you think about your mother and your father, what ways did each of them influence you in your own development as a human being?
Oh my God, what a question. My father wanted to help the world, and he did everything he could for people on the streets outside of his business and everything. He was very open-hearted. And what about my mother? She wanted to help all the poorest people during the war. That helped me. And she was very psychic, and nobody knew anything about being psychic in those days. And so she was afraid to talk about it. But she told me that she hoped I would one day develop something that would help people realize that you can be a little psychic. I didn't do that, but I developed the idea of dreaming.
When you said it helped you that she worked with some of the poorest people, how did that help you?
I saw her during the Second World War. Makes me almost cry. Working in the center of Schenectady in the most poorest places where people from the war coming to the United States came. Suffering, poor, no clothes, and she was there helping them. She told me I shouldn't stay there. I should get a cup of milk in some restaurant, but I had to go and watch. And there were lines of people from the Second World War. And she would talk to them. Some of them she gave a hug to. And almost, I don't know what she did, but afterwards the people often smiled. It was amazing. Wow. I don't know what question you asked that reminded me of that. That was one of the biggest experiences for me.
Wow.
Seeing these very poor people from the war, bleeding and poverty-stricken. My mother talked, a whole line of them, and my mother would sit and talk to each. And they went away with a smile somehow. Wow, I forgot that. I don't know what you just said that reminded me.
What about each of your parents influenced your development as a human being?
Well, I knew I wanted to now help people in the world. And my father, being a chemist and working for the General Electric Company during the war, I wanted to understand physics. So those things inspired me to do world work and integrate science with psychology.
Do you have memories of things that fascinated you as a little boy and things that disturbed you?
Amy reminded me that I used wax paper to protect the roof of a house so the rain wouldn't go in. Even when I was little, I knew how to do that. Growing up as a human being was a full-time job. During the Second World War in the United States, and then going to school, surviving being beaten up, that was all a very big thing.
What was it in your character, your deepest being, that enabled you to transform that horrific big event into creating more consciousness around international world issues? Like, what was that in your character as a little boy that enabled you to do that?
I live in the world. There's a lot of people and a lot of diversity issues. Where I grew up next to the Black community and the lighter colored communities. World issues everywhere. How come there wasn't a big teacher to come and work it all out? There wasn't anybody. So since I was little, I knew we have to find stuff in ourselves and in others to help communities get to know each other and less conflict.
At some point you said that you learned how to fight.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, did you take boxing or martial arts?
No. After having been badly beaten as a child and lying on the ground for a while, suffering from that, I knew you have to learn to fight to live through this world. So how did I learn it? I didn't know anybody to teach me. I just started to fight and be stronger. And then the friends that I liked so much, I would ask them, try to beat me up. And I didn't hurt them, but that taught me how to fight. I got really good at fighting.
If you could speak to all world leaders publicly and offer them guidance and words of wisdom, what would you say to them today?
If I could do it publicly?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Number one, work out your family problems first. The person you're married to. Learn to live with that person better and realize your problem is all over the world and you're not solving it if you don't solve it at home first. So do it, and whatever you learn there, use it with the other political people you don't agree with. Remember, your opponent is a part of yourself you've known for a long time and haven't worked on. And it won't help to kill them. They'll still be there. That's one of the big things I've learned. You can't kill the opponent. It's always there, inside you and outside. If you don't work your inner stuff out, you won't be as good a leader as you could be. I know that for sure.
Anything else you would tell them?
Remember, you're not the boss. But the deepest part of the people who voted for you and you're dreaming are the boss. And say that you support the people and you support the deepest dreams to help make a better world. That's what I would like them to be able to. One or two have said that in little ways earlier. Temporarily, at least, it was good.
So I have a question coming out of that. Is our larger purpose to eradicate war?
Our biggest job is not to eradicate war, but to learn how to conflict in a way that improves relationships. War is a sign that our relationship ability has not been working very well. So let's learn to relate better. Just being big and powerful is okay, but not enough. That would be my suggestion.
How did you come to develop the concept of deep democracy?
Oh my God, what a question. Wow. Deep democracy, how did I come to develop it? Well, I like democracy, but I didn't notice anybody following it. Democracy is this group is okay and that's okay. They weren't very good at following. Deeper democracies, get deeper in yourself, follow the dreaming process with others, in relationships, follow the dreaming in your relationship, watch your signals, and in conflict, go deeper, and even go deeper to the essence level. Bring all of your psychology to conflict work. I love it. And it worked.
When you said like democracy, I like democracy, but democracy didn't work. What do you mean?
The idea that all people are equal is beautiful. I just love it. Ha, ha, ha. No one else loves it. People think the other group is good for nothing. Let's kill them. I realized democracy was not working anywhere. And so let's make all the various feelings and signals valuable in a deeper democracy. Learn even how to switch roles with the person you can't stand. And I promise you life will be a lot better for everybody. Like Amy and I, we really haven't had a fight. What is it, 20 years? 22 years, yeah, as I said. Because if we ever have any tension, I try to feel into her side, and I do that with everybody. You have a lot of fun in your relationships then. Fighting becomes boring and stupid.
Do you remember the last fight you had with Amy?
Last fight?
22 years ago? Do you remember what it was?
I was trying to convince her that she shouldn't hate herself, and she had an argument about that with me. Something like that many, many years ago.
Going back to what you just shared about learning how to navigate conflict through relationships.
Yes,
right?
yes.
People that know nothing about process work, they haven't developed skills of awareness, they haven't studied process work. What can each of them do in like a concrete way as a beginning step for working on conflict in a relationship?
Well, first take their side. That's the biggest thing. Don't be too shy about saying everything. And then don't kid yourself. The other person is a part of you are not getting along with. Wake up and know them better in yourself. Then go back and work on the conflict. That's what I would say.
If I saw the other person's not me, the other person's disgusting.
Wonderful. How disgusting are they?
So I almost can't even speak about it. They disgust me as a human being. They're evil. They're gross.
Show me how gross and stupid and evil they are. Just
Tell you?
Tell me, show me.
Well, they think they're really like better than everyone. They don't take anyone into consideration.
Yeah.
They try to destroy the environment.
I want you to be more out there in the world and louder than you normally are. Bring your ideas and feelings out more, and you'll have less conflict.
So I should just be like them.
Be like that energy.
Energy.
The energy of somebody mixes you up and upsets you only if it's something you've already repressed. Otherwise, you'll say to them, oh, I know you in myself. Hi. And you won't have many conflicts, I promise. Well, I was in Zurich, Switzerland, studying physics, and then I wanted to work on myself and wanted to go to the analyst called Marie-Louise von Franz, and she had to wait a couple of weeks, so I went to one of Jung's grandchildren, Dieter Baumann, for analysis to begin with. And then at one point we became very friendly. He said, let's visit Jung's house in Bollingen. And so he and I went there and we opened the door.
This stone.
A little stone house, and we opened the door. I went in and I saw this funny book called The Tao Te Ching on where he had lived and where he had eaten on his little table. That's how I started to practice and learn about Taoism from Jung's book that he left behind.
Right. And what was it about Taoism that was so fascinating or
Taoism for me is very, very, very close to physics. Nobody knows that. It's about what's happening. It's about throwing a coin, for example, and watching it. That's the essence of process work, watching what's happening spontaneously and following it. So Taoism, from Jung and Tao, came process work.
Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that just went on. It soaked into every aspect. There's so many aspects of process work.
I love Taoism and I still love it, but behind process work is the idea something meaningful is trying to arise through spontaneous events, not just dreams at night.
So you took Jung's teleology, the idea that things are meaningful in dreams, more to...
Went further
Many-
with all of life, yeah.
Beautiful. I know that there's so many aspects that you developed of process work, and one of them was the whole area of extreme states. And I'm just wondering if you want to say something about how you got involved in that. I know that some psychiatrists or something asked you to come in and help with some people who were in so-called psychotic states, but you call them extreme states.
Well, when I studied at the Jung Institute, you were not supposed to work with people who were psychotic or semi-psychotic. So I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. They're people. So I started working with everybody. And that's how I began to do it. And then I got known for that. And the police found out that I could do things like that too. So that once in Switzerland, they brought a so-called psychotic patient to me. And he had been on the street screaming about the light that would be coming and making a lot of noise about it. To make it brief, he got really troublesome with everybody and the police had to pick him up. They brought him to me. The so-called crazy guy said, "The light is coming." So I said, "Turn it on. You're in the darkness." "What do you mean? You don't see what you're doing. Wake up to the light that you are. Be more intelligent, for God's sakes." He heard me. They didn't bring him to a psychiatric institution afterwards. They brought him to a doctor to check out. He came out of his so-called psychotic state and realized he wanted to be more light and enlightened.
You were saying you believed in that was meaningful. It wasn't just that he was crazy or...
There's no such thing as crazy to me. There's just process. Whether someone is living or dying, living and dying are good terms. But for me, everything is process. Follow it as best you can. Follow the process as well as medicine and all the others. You'll process first. Yeah, is the point. And most people, many people may not need psychiatric institutions. Some will not. I put it very conservatively, yeah.
I'm still thinking about all these different areas of process work that bloomed out of these basic ideas, one of which is you worked a lot with children.
Yeah.
And I think developed some relationship to a pediatrician, or I remember you told an example of working with a child who spit all the time or something, a Swiss child.
And they couldn't stop him. Stop spitting, you little monster. And he wouldn't. So I said to the mother and father, please spit a little bit. Just a little
They should spit.
tiny bit. Pooh, like that. And it did, it began to help them to bring stuff out in their relationship, which was very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
They got all excited and told their child doctor, pediatrician, and then I had too many kids to work. But anyhow.
That helped the child.
Yeah, the
child
kid
stopped spitting.
right away.
Right.
He saw the mother and father spit. He smiled. And then they started arguing, and he got bored and started to play with a toy on the floor. It's very good.
There's so many more stories, but anyway, that's great.
Working with people is a lot of fun.
I love working with kids too.
With everybody.
Tell us a little bit about your work with people near death or people in coma states and how you developed that work.
Well, I met people who got sick when I was in Switzerland and went into comas and what have you. Thought, why doesn't psychology work with somebody who's rolling around in a coma? They're still people. So I started with a client of mine who went into a coma. I worked with her, amplifying her symptoms in bed as she moved around a little bit. And she rolled over on the floor. And with other doctors and nurses watching, I didn't come close to her, but I rolled on the floor at another point in the hospital room. And believe it or not, there was an amazing woman. After a few minutes, she said, "Oh, you're moving with me." Soon she got out of the hospital later, became a great leader in Switzerland later on. Follow the dreaming process.
What did the doctors and nurses think as they watched you working with her?
Well, the nurses and doctors, some of them were freaking out and said, "No, not on the floor." But the doctors, that two of them knew me, said, "Shh, just watch him and see what happens." And the person really who was in a coma awakened out of a comatose state, had been very sick. Later became a very nice friend of mine, a wonderful woman. Mm-hmm.
So that work evolved more, working with patients in comas.
Working with patients in all states of consciousness, following the body, listening carefully, of course, and encouraging it to be more conscious, awakens people out of coma a lot sooner.
What about people that are on their way to dying?
Oh, if they're on the way to dying, I say, let's let go and die and let go. And the concept of death is totally wrong, because just recently I worked with a man who was dying, and I said, let's die together. And he started on a little boat trip, having a good time. And yes, he died physically later. Shortly thereafter, he was in pretty bad shape physically. But do people really die? I'll leave that an open question. I don't think so, myself, from what I've seen.
What do you think happens?
I think you are a dream trying to realize itself looking like a person. And the person is there, very important. And the person will die in time. But the dream is timeless.
Were there moments for you in your life when you felt despair along your journey?
Despair, misery, depression.
Yeah. And maybe dreams that helped you at that time?
I was always following my dreaming process, and as a result, I can never remember being depressed for more than about a half an hour at any point. Because if you're depressed, I love it. Just go deeper inside and let the dreaming move you. So depression has never been for me a very interesting thing, except for the dreaming that comes out of it.
You talk about nature is my goddess.
Yes.
The whales and the mountains and the sea.
Yes.
And Amy have been your main teachers.
Yes.
I want to know, what have they each taught you? What are the biggest lessons the whales taught you, the mountains taught you, the sea taught you, and Amy taught you?
The biggest lesson Amy has taught me is how to love even better. She's a really loving creature. So I learned that from her. And from the whales in the sea, what have they taught me? To follow not just my everyday mind, but like the sea goes up and down, to follow the gravity effects of the moon in the evening, and let the sun come in the day, follow the process of life. That's what I've learned from them. Life is a process, let's join it consciously.
Can you say more about your development, about process-oriented detachment? What does it mean, and how is it different from spiritual forms of detachment?
Well, it's very similar, except if you're a process person and feel more detached, you can fight better and enjoy it and do all sorts of things that so-called spiritual people usually don't get mixed up with. You won't be afraid to go on the street and join conflicts and help them by singing and screaming on both sides, or all by yourself across the street, to help the world.
How did you develop that kind of detachment?
I'm not detached, I'm just empirical. I notice they're fighting, let's bring it out, study it, encourage it to be more conscious. It's easy. Now it's easy for me. Yeah. Wherever I see a conflict, I jump in. I'm on this side, I'm on that side, and I help them flow between the sides.
Before you die, Arny, is there anything that you would like to see manifest about process work?
The way it's going is good. I'd like to see more people using it, watching their signals in public, and they are learning to do that all over the world. There's now many centers worldwide. I'd just like them to use it better, as much as possible. And dislike it, hate it, and then offer changes to it. Process work is a process. That's what I like about it. It's not just right. It can be wrong, but in the process of developing. Not like a psychology where everything is known and done. Writing is none of my business. I don't write. I listen to something that wants to speak through me. I can't write. It does it. If I write, it's boring to me. So I always listen. What is it inside of me that wants to express itself on this subject or that subject? Then I can correct it. Otherwise, what I write is too boring for me.
When you sit down to write, like when you wrote The Shaman's Body,
Yeah.
how did that come through you? Can you share a little bit?
I read Castaneda and Tan Juan about shamanism, and I was sitting alone in the mountains at the time, and suddenly I began to write my first book, The Shaman's Body. Stuff started pouring out of me into the typewriter. I had ideas about shamanism and Carlos Castaneda and what a shaman is. And that was my first discovery that writing was something that wanted to happen in me. That's behind those 20-some books that I've done.
Do you usually write a book in a very fast period of time?
Altered state. I think, what do I want to say? Okay, now relax and see what it says. That's how I write. And it doesn't tire me out so much.
If I never knew Arnold Mindell before today, and I watched whatever this will be at the end, and I think, oh wow, I want to like read what he's written. So I'm going to ask you a question, and just whatever comes to your mind. If I was a doctor or a scientist, what book do you think I should start with that you've written?
Probably the Dreambody, very early book. Talks about dreams and how they appear in body symptoms. So simple and elementary and something that needs to be learned by all medical people, that our symptoms are dreams trying to awaken us.
And if I'm a politician, what book should I start with?
If you're a politician, what book? World Book books would be good. Any book on world work would be fine, yeah.
Like?
Sitting in the Fire.
And I'm a high school student.
You shouldn't read. Look at this video of Arny talking to Cathy.
What about if I'm a teacher or a coach or a therapist? What should I read first?
If you're going to be a teacher or a coach or a therapist, read the Tao Te Ching first.
Well, you didn't write the Tao Te Ching.
No, but it's one of my favorite things that I follow in process work. And then, to begin with, why not read Dreambody, my first book?
If I'm a tradesperson, I'm a plumber, I'm a carpenter, or I'm a tailor, what should I start with?
Don't read a book. Remember just the sentence. Notice your dreams and try to feel how they are influencing you during the day and in relationships. Forget books.
How did your journey as a father inform you about life, the universe, and everything else?
Well, if you follow the babies, they were really cute. You learn that the baby is following something very deep. It's like relationship work in general. You follow yourself, you follow the child, and things go along pretty well then. I just loved it. When I first was at the Jung Institute and I had a conflict there with the other teachers and was going to a meeting to work on that conflict, my daughter, who was 3 at that time, Laura, I was in the bathroom worried about the conflict that was going to try to help with at the Jung Institute in Switzerland. And Laura, my daughter, came in. What are you so upset about? The conflict, I said, between these two roles in that Jungian group. That's no problem, she said. All you gotta do is yell on this side and then yell on that side. She was right and very good. Not quite enough, but kids are really bright and smart and love to be helpful if you appreciate them enough.
She was like a little world worker at the moment.
Everybody is, even though we don't notice it in them usually. All children. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other stories like that about your kids when you think about moments growing up with them?
Many, many, many fun little moments. But, oh yeah, Amy said I myself was wild and very playful. And I even put the kids, when I was driving the car in a little tiny Swiss town, I put them on the roof of the car in the rack area, which was safe, and drove about 2 or 3 miles an hour, a little bit, and they enjoyed it in just about a block or 2. It's a lot of fun. And I brought them to seminars, and they had fun. We were all wild and playful.
Did you have a relationship with your grandparents? Were your grandparents alive when you were growing up?
My grandmother on my mother's side, and my father's father had just died. My grandmothers on both sides, I had a little bit of a relationship to, yes. My grandfather on my mother's side died in the First World War, during the war, in a trench during the war fighting, and wrote to my mother from the trench that she had to now be the father. And so, war, family, all of this is in the background of me wanting to help the world.
How about being a grandpa?
You've always been a grandma and grandpa, with grandchildren and without them. And when they come along, you just play with them. And the same with everything and everybody. We're all grandpas and grandmas. All the time.
What are your dreams about the present?
Let's learn to get along with all the parts of ourselves and learn to flow better in relationships and conflict to reduce war, which will help the whole human race live a little longer without the carbon footprint of bombs and what have you. As a human race, we're going to die in 100 years. But If we learn to work on conflict better, there will be less war, less bombs, and people will be more conscious how to live with less energy. It will be better for the whole human race.
What is your highest and your lowest dream about humanity?
My greatest dream and hope for the human race is to realize probably in 100 years, because of the changing oxygen levels on this planet, chances are most people won't be able to live here in a good 100, surely 120 years. So, one of the biggest jobs for the human race is to learn to integrate death. Even if you're really young, let go and let the dreaming move you. Integrate death. And in that way, we'll be able to get along together, use less energy, less war and fighting. And we'll be more conscious of the way we abuse energy also in cars and stuff like that.
How do you learn how to integrate death?
You die when you think of it and you say, death is coming. You're over 50 years old or over 40 for some people. You're going to die. Yippee! Let go. Until you feel not you, but something else moves you. That's a way of integrating death. Letting go and joining the dreaming world.
And if people can do that, then what?
They feel better about everything. They have less conflict and actually working with people right near death. I do that too with them. Let's integrate and play with what you're dreaming. And in a way, people almost always experience themselves as not really dying in the conventional sense. But the dreaming part of us is apparently timeless.
So you're now 81, moving closer to 82, right?
Yeah, I'll be 82 in a month or two, yeah.
Each year on your birthday, you've had this tradition of interpreting people's dreams over like a 24 or 48 hour period.
I have.
How did that develop into a gift that you give the world like that?
I thought, well, it's the new year. Who the hell are you? Where are you going? Let's wake up, world, to letting the dreaming help us live a better life. So that's how I began it, just wondering about those things. And it works, it's fun. It was fun, yeah.
It's really fun to take part in those, yeah.
Thank you, Cathy.
When your body's no longer around physically in physical form, how do you think your dreaming will go on, will live on?
Through people that I love, it will be, they'll think of me as if I'm a dream figure. Like I think of C.G. Jung, he's going on inside of me. I love him. He still motivates and does things for me. And everybody else that will happen with too. So we will die, and maybe not completely. Who we are is a spirit that doesn't have a time associated with us.
How do you want to be remembered?
Remember, I don't care if someone dislikes me. I hope they hate me. That'll be good.
Say that again, Arny?
If people don't like me, that would be fine if they dislike me. And those that remember me should listen in their ears to the dreams, what I have to say. Maybe they'll pick up some messages and carry it on. I'll die, and I don't think so, not quite. The average age of life for men here in the United States is 77. So I'm over that. And I love it. I love aging. It's just, again, process. And do we really die? From what I've seen, all the people that I see, as I said before, yes, the physical body will die, though mine is still pretty good, running around and stuff. But no, I'm interested in dreaming and getting into people's dreams to believe in themselves more. That's my goal. That's how to love yourself. Believe in who you are and what you do.
I've heard so many people, Arny, talk about aging, and it's rare to hear somebody say what you just said. I love
it.
What do you love about aging,
Wow, when you get older, you can't fight so good like you used to, and you can, and you do. But what's the best thing about aging is it forces you to start thinking about death. And I love that. Do we die? Awakening your ideas about, my ideas about death and what's life all about. That's what I love about aging. And for some reason, I can still do just about everything I've always done. So I'm not aging that much, but I will age and die and also not die.
What do you feel is the reason that you can do most of what you've always done? Because a lot of people stop being able to do what they always did as they age. What do you credit that to?
Dreaming while awake. I've always followed not just my conscious mind, which is good, but dreaming. And that allows me to step outside of aging, of young and old, male and female, this country. And dreaming opens me up to the infinite and gives me lots of fun and energy.
What is death to you at your age right now?
I like it. I'm not against it. Death means dying, but dreaming doesn't stop. And from what I know about people who die just before death, all of them dream about something about going on afterwards. So I'm not so sure the whole of us dies. I must have told you and many people a bunch of times, my first client was 30, had bad cancer, and he was dying. And he dreamed and came to see me for the dream work that he was by his grave, his coffin, and nobody saw him dancing around the coffin. They thought he was only in the coffin. The concept of death is good. You're going to die, take care of everything, blah, blah, blah. And think about 100 years into the future and get started on it now. Work on yourself as if you're going to be around, not physically in this form, but as if you're going to be around a long time yet. Because I think you are.